On September 5th, you crashed into the station in Moscow. Boom! Bada boom. In the forest, railways and trains are being blown up.
Damn, holy shit.
Retaliatory strikes from our armed forces across Russia.
Ah! Yeah, he's blowing up the station, going bald.
Explosions on the way. Muscovites are panicking.
What would I do? What would I do? What would I do?
What would I do? A freight train is on fire. Hundreds of passengers have been evacuated. Traffic has been stopped.
Detectives! Come out, please!
Muscovites report the roof has collapsed after a powerful explosion. The tracks are burning. The station is engulfed in smoke.
Look. That's it. Basically, this is a disaster. It's a total mess.
Trains have stopped all over the country. This is a blow, not just to the capital. It's a blow to logistics. Rasen Pyral Afon.
Trains? Damn. Tell me, they haven't cleared out the passengers? How are they supposed to clear them out?
Airports are in chaos. Aeroflot is paralyzed. Servers have been destroyed. Flights are cancelled. Meanwhile, Russia is restricting gasoline exports. And this is just the beginning. The economy is going into a tailspin. The country is frozen in flames. Let's discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, a personal enemy of Putin and Kadyrov, Ruslan Kutayev.
Good afternoon, Dasha. Greetings to you.
Glory to Ukraine. The railways are under attack. Near Moscow, in the Rostov region, drones attacked 5 regions at once. Free flights are coming in close. In Salsk, there's a fire at a residential building near the railway station. A freight train is burning. Well done.
Guys,
The passenger train was urgently evacuated. We are blowing up trains, stations, and railway junctions.
it exploded, it's burning.
Here it is, the power station. We came in from the north. Aviation is paralyzed. A hacker attack has crashed Aeroflot's IT infrastructure. 7,000 servers have been destroyed. Hundreds of flights have been cancelled. The FSB is preparing a broadcast because the losses exceed $50 million. Passengers in Moscow are trapped. The airports, Sheremetyevo, Polkovoy, Zhukovsky, are paralyzed. Panic, chaos, disruption. Telegram, the FSB is shutting down communications and the internet in many regions of Russia. We are entering a phase of total pressure along the railway tracks.
By means of the air transportation,
By sea, what exactly do you vividly remember from your experiences, and what precisely will you articulate and convey to others about those memories?
These were truly incredible events. It was especially beautiful when the key railway station in Salsk-Rostov region was completely destroyed. I know those places very well. Everything that comes from the Urals and Siberia to support the war effort passes through there. And suddenly they destroy exactly this crucial part of the railway that causes huge disruptions. It's simply an immeasurable loss for the war effort, for various kinds of support. We know that certain regions and military units don't just refuel in Rostov, for example. They send tankers with fuel from their own regions. And suddenly, this fuel got stuck. And the train itself, now Ukrainian intelligence is bombing it with their drones, and everything there is burning too. It's an amazing move, absolutely the right thing to do. This should have been done a long time ago. But now, in this present moment, it is indeed being done. In other words, significant progress. Let's say, essential support for the front lines, all of this crucial effort is systematically being destroyed. As for Aeroflot, the situation is precisely the same, an incredible and extensive amount of work. They meticulously managed to cause substantial damage just within the intricate system itself. In the complex process of restoring Aeroflot's electronic system, it incurred a staggering cost of $50 million, and they emphatically state that this challenging situation will undoubtedly drag on for a very, very long period of time. And for a very long time, these are disruptions, these are flight cancellations. Russia is a huge country, and if Aeroflot stops flying, then essentially a huge part of Russia is as if no longer part of the unified Russia, no longer connected, and it falls away. And Moscow's sovereignty over these territories also disappears. Even from this perspective, I'm not even talking about the economic aspect, but from a political point of view, this is a tremendous blow. The logistics are destroyed, being systematically dismantled. And this work that's being done regarding the airplanes, the passengers, yes, the passengers are uncomfortable, and rightly so. There's no need to keep a criminal government in power and go flying off somewhere to relax and, excuse me, have fun, while at the same time Ukrainians are being killed and Ukrainian cities are being destroyed. Now it's uncomfortable, and they should have to experience what the people of Ukraine are going through every day. So this is the right approach, clear and consistent, and it can only be welcomed.
Well, all of this is happening against the backdrop of blocked spare parts supplies and the refusal to service airplanes. We're seeing planes falling apart, engines failing, and the FSB is holding meetings with the Minister of Transport and the ministry, and then Putin is calling people in for discussions. But this is a serious problem if the FSB is already getting involved.
Of course, it's a very serious and significant problem. Naturally, they simply can't do anything effective about it. Take engine manufacturing for a clear example. The company known as Motor Sich is distinctly Ukrainian. When it decisively sided with Ukraine and consequently stopped all cooperation with Russia, Russia's entire aircraft manufacturing industry basically came to a complete halt. Primarily because Ukraine had consistently supplied the essential engines. They desperately tried to make their very own engines, but it was a complete and utter failure. They truly can't do anything at all. They absolutely can't do anything whatsoever. Even with ordinary bearings specifically designed for the railways, there are some very heat-resistant, exceptionally high-performance bearings that were reliably supplied by Japan and the United States for the critical railway infrastructure. Even China, despite its advanced manufacturing capabilities, doesn't possess such high quality and specialized bearings. And so, when they stopped getting them, not to mention the airplanes, which really do crash, it's a tragedy for the people who died. But now crashes will happen more often because the planes are worn out, there are no spare parts, and the engines are failing. As for the railways, the simple lack of bearings is stopping a huge number of train cars, both passenger and freight.
Military analysts claim that there wouldn't have been an aviation collapse if Russia had simply closed its airspace, since it is waging a full-scale war against Ukraine, and its airspace should be closed. It is at war. But Putin will never do that, because for him, that would be a sign of weakness. So, it's impossible. I've noticed that many regional governors are saying that the FSB is jamming communications. Russian security services are jamming both communications and the internet. And Russians will have to get used to living without telegram, without communication, without the internet. In essence, the country is turning into a concentration camp.
Without a doubt, they are now having very serious discussions, and there are already hints that they will ban WhatsApp as well. They want to completely cut people off from, let's say, alternative information, completely isolate them. They've presented their own max, but first of all, hardly anyone will want to use it. At least only those who have no other choice will stay on max. Secondly, this max will not work nearly as well as other social networks do. And all of this taken together is bad news for the Kremlin and for the FSB, because people have started consuming a different kind of informational product. This is no longer the same enthusiastic audience that used to applaud and ask to conquer, to reach Kyiv, to reach Lviv. Now they are facing a very serious problem. The Russian authorities, and not just Putin, but perhaps above all the FSB, are risking the lives of Russians without batting an eye. And they will keep doing this on the railways, on airplanes, at train stations, anywhere at all, on the sea and in the air. They will continue to risk the lives of Russia and Russians. But all of this is just to avoid some kind of reputational loss, to preserve their image, and to hold on to their power. Nothing else, absolutely nothing more. That's precisely what their entire strategic approach is meticulously built around. They fully comprehend that they've already lost, and now they simply need to patiently bide their time to skillfully maneuver themselves into some kind of, let's say, a favorable current or a propitious direction, a secure track where, with some semblance of dignity or a preserved public face, they could potentially manage to effectively keep their power. Not total and utter destruction, but at the very least saving some kind of respectable face. preserving their established authority. That's exactly what they're currently busy with, dedicating all their efforts to this objective. And they couldn't care less, not even in the slightest, about ordinary Russians, couldn't care less about their tragic deaths. We all know precisely what's happening at the front, the grim reality unfolding there.
Slava Bogevich, Trump gave Putin 10 days, and the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has already made an official statement. Most likely, Russia's war against Ukraine will end soon, or at least the acute phase will. What do you attribute this to? Do you truly believe that Putin's recent ultimatum will actually be enforced as he intends? And what consequences will there be for Russia? If Russia violates it, if within these 10 days it does not cease fire, what is Trump prepared to do, and what consequences will there be for Russia and for Putin personally?
I think the first thing Trump will do, he's already a hostage to his own words. He was too clear, too explicit, and made his position too obvious. For all his talkativeness, for all the times he backtracks or denies his own words, this time he has made himself a hostage to all his statements. Even within his own party, they wouldn't understand. And in the Trump administration, they wouldn't understand if he acted differently. I can even accurately guess how this entire situation will play out. All his various threats, these are the significant tariffs, or more precisely, the comprehensive sanctions he extensively talked about. These particular sanctions won't merely be about raising some minor tariffs, not in terms of the direct trade relations between the Russian Federation and the United States of America, which currently only amount to approximately $3 billion. Here there will be substantial sanctions, specifically secondary sanctions, that will be directly imposed against major nations like China, India, Brazil, and Turkey, those significant global players who are currently the primary buyers of Russian oil and natural gas. I genuinely think these impactful sanctions will actually be imposed. However, I don't think they'll be as incredibly harsh or as severely punitive as the ones that were being meticulously prepared in the United States Congress. At the very least, despite the undeniable fact that Donald Trump is now not just deeply offended by Vladimir Putin, he has even started to genuinely hate him a little, because all of Trump's initial expectations were completely rejected and all his diplomatic initiatives were entirely dismissed. He simply expected that Putin would meet him halfway, and now Trump will undoubtedly start acting incredibly tough and assertive. And all his toughness will come down to the fact that sanctions will be imposed. Not the harshest sanctions, but still tough enough for Russia. The very fact that if these sanctions, as we're saying, these secondary ones are imposed against countries that buy oil and gas, that alone is already a blow. That's already a very serious blow to Russia's already, as they say, collapsing economy, because after that, there's nothing left. We can see what's happening in Russia right now. What's happening in Russia? They're already killing people. Even the former Minister of Transport, the governor of the Kursk region, just look at what's going on. The deputy speaker of the State Duma clashed with the chairman of the Senate of the Federal Assembly of the Russian Federation. What's the reason for all this? And the reason is that now Putin is saying, I let you steal as much as you wanted. I corrupted you. But today the country needs money. So start sharing the money. And no one wants to share. After all, the symbolic killing of that Minister of Transport was a reminder to the ministers and governors, if you don't quickly contribute money to support the army, the same thing will happen to you. And that's why the conflict is escalating now. If it's already at the level of the deputy chairman of the State Duma and the chairwoman of the Federation Council, if the conflict is being brought out and discussed in the investigative committee, this is the peak. This is already a crisis of political power in the Russian Federation. The conflict is out in the open and being discussed.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The death of Ramzan Kadyrov. An emergency meeting in the Kremlin. The FSB is in a panic. For several days now, Ramzan Kadyrov has disappeared from the radar. There isn't a single live video. Only photoshopped pictures remain, taken back in the spring. Everyone's wearing jackets, most likely in March. According to leaks, Kadyrov tried to commit suicide in Turkey, to drown himself in Bodrum. In Sevastopol, they're hanging up his portraits as if it's already a farewell, but in Grozny, there's silence. Has Kadyrov died, or are they just hiding him to transfer the power structure? Who is the successor? What's happening inside Chechnya? And why is the FSB assembling emergency teams in the Kremlin under the pretext of regional coordination?
Indeed, there was information coming from Turkey. Naturally, I have my own reliable sources in Turkey, and I really did learn from them that Ramzan Kadyrov indeed flew to Bodrum. He was there, he was on a vacation there, enjoying his time. And according to the comprehensive information I currently possess, he reportedly felt quite unwell and experienced significant distress while swimming. Subsequently, they promptly called for an ambulance, and he was swiftly taken away for immediate medical attention and so forth. At this particular juncture, any given version of events could be considered equally plausible and potentially accurate. I now wish to discuss another truly exclusive and highly significant piece of information that I personally received just a few days ago. I was at a friend's place, and someone arrived to see him from Grozny or Moscow. I don't know exactly which. So, as we were talking, well, let's just say, a reliable source. He said that indeed Kadyrov is in very serious condition. And the most important, the key thing I heard was this. There have been various theories about his illness. Some say he was poisoned by the FSB, and that despite the intervention of various doctors from European to Middle Eastern, the source of the damage, the effect of this poison or toxic substance, it's simply impossible to stop this decomposition in his body, and that he is in a serious condition. And from time to time, some kind of medical intervention straightens him out so that he can walk. We can see that. I observed very carefully myself. His last official appearance was recorded a few days ago when he was in Grozny, meeting people on the streets of Grozny on Aslanbek Sheripov Street, if I remember correctly, where he was talking with women. Well, it was clear that the man is ill. He could barely move. And indeed, his illness, his ailment is overcoming him. Once again, I'm not insisting on any particular version. Some say it's the pancreas. Others say his kidneys were replaced. Still others say it's poisoning. Personally, I'm inclined to believe that poisoning is, after all, Moscow's driving force. They get rid of all those who are inconvenient precisely through poisoning. And it's well known to everyone that the FSB and Kadyrov have long been in quite a serious confrontation. They are doing everything they can to neutralize him. They are doing everything they can to weaken Putin, because in fact, Kadyrov and his followers are a very significant force in protecting Putin. And all of this together, in principle, may strongly indicate that Kadyrov's health, or indeed the significant lack thereof, is being specifically targeted. And there are, in fact, genuinely active forces that will do absolutely everything possible to neutralize him.
Ramzan Kadyrov, you have just shared some very exclusive information. So we can assume that if the Russian special services eliminated Kadyrov by poisoning him, they are also preparing for the elimination of Putin. In other words, are they, so to speak, weakening the protective circle around the country's top leader?
Absolutely right. First and foremost, this is aimed at weakening Putin. Here, unlike Prigozhin or say others like Kolokoltsev or Bastrikin, who basically switched sides to the FSB, Putin was left with only two forces he could rely on, the National Guard under Zolotov and Kadyrov. And it should be said very clearly that Putin relied even more on Kadyrov and his men than on Zolotov. And this force needed to be neutralized. From this perspective, in recent years, the FSB's active behavior was directed toward this goal. We witnessed how much material discrediting Kadyrov was released, which later turned out to be fake and did not correspond to reality. Putin couldn't keep up with defending Kadyrov. And why is that? Because Putin wasn't so much worried about Kadyrov or standing up for him, but rather for himself, because it was his own protection. And that's why, Dasha, I think we can quite reasonably assume here that the force opposing Kadyrov will do everything to neutralize him, to kill him, to pursue him in any way possible. And so any expectations here are impossible. Any ending to this story is possible, and at any time too.
Ramzan Kadyrov, what does it mean if the FSB has gone against Putin himself? Is that really the case? Then what does that mean then?
Many people try to avoid this, to run away from it. But it really is the undeniable case, I'm absolutely convinced, because Vladimir Putin is now a complete hostage of the devastating war he started in Ukraine. He has entered such a phase that now, if he tries to stop the war, he will have to tell the Russian people, his, let's say, core electorate, which is a certain percentage, those suffering from the most severe form of fascism, Russism, he will have to tell these people that he has not achieved his goal, that he missed the mark. In that case, the leader must be replaced with another. In this regard, Putin is entangled. He can't do anything, and the FSB is not there. The FSB is not only well represented in Russian power structures, They are the cementing force of all components of Russian authority. Why? Because this personnel policy was carried out exclusively with the approval and recommendation of the Russian FSB when they were together, as they say, on the same team and trusted each other. And now consider the children of prominent figures such as Patrushev, Ivanov, and Bortnikov. Basically, anyone you might name, for instance, Kemezov, or indeed anyone at all, they are all individuals who have successfully gone through the rigorous training and educational programs of the esteemed FSB school. Their children have grown up. Some of them are already heading certain ministries or are deputy prime ministers, like Patrushev's son, or leading agencies and major corporations, serious corporations at that, financial, gas, oil, and so on. And now it so happens that the future, the prospects of these descendants, these children of FSB generals, are tied to Putin's actions. It will be much better and easier for them to hand over Putin no matter how. They could shoot him, claim that Putin left a note and shot himself, and then pin everything on him. There are 1,000 different scenarios here. And again, we come back to the point that regarding Kadyrov, we started with him, actions are being taken to weaken Putin, specifically to get one step closer to Putin, in order to neutralize him, or if you like, to eliminate him. This is how the issue stands now in the Russian state.
Ruslan Kamgivich, who could be Ramzan Kadyrov's successor? In that case, his son, who has already been introduced to Putin and who is now officially married.
No, I don't think so. In fact, I'm convinced that even in this situation, when there are active events all over Russia related to the war in Ukraine, they can't put that boy in charge. Although there is another option here. The thing is, if the FSB wants to take full control and Chechnya is no longer governed autonomously like under Kadyrov, but instead is run directly by the FSB, then they could, let's say, appoint one of their own FSB people to oversee this boy, and that would create a completely different scenario for how things develop. Well, I don't think they'll go down that path because the people Kadyrov relies on are already extremely powerful groups, extremely powerful. They have gained strength. They haven't just gained strength. These are generals, active generals, people with enormous wealth, people who have built extensive connections. And now, if the FSB simply tries to somehow get rid of them, it genuinely won't be able to effectively control the entire situation. They will absolutely have to be taken into significant account and considered. At the very least, their interests will have to be respected. It's hard to say right now. I'm not saying that someone like Delimkhanov or Daudov, for example, will be replaced instead of Kadyrov. That too, I believe, would be a conflict. Why? These are rival factions of equal strength. If one faction is put in charge, say, of governing the Chechen Republic, it will create a conflict with the other two factions which had equal power. And in this situation, it's very difficult to judge right now. And here, this is the only thing. This is important, Dasha, for our viewers to hear. Here, the decision will not be made by Putin. If Putin were the one making the decision, without a doubt, he would have put Kadyrov's uncle, Ramzan Kadyrov's uncle, Magomed, at the head of the Chechen Republic. Why? Because in order to preserve those resources, huge billion-dollar resources, to maintain control, someone from among the close relatives must be in charge. The boy, no, I think he's too much of a boy. We remember when Ramzan Kadyrov came to power, they changed the Chechen constitution because he was too young by age. I think the requirement was 35 years old, and he was younger than that. They had to change the constitution to accommodate him. Well, excuse me, when someone is 30 years old and they change the constitution for him, and when a boy is 17 years old. These are completely incomparable things that don't fit even within the criminal Russian logic. And that's why there will be other options here.
Dear audience, write in the comments what you think might happen after the death of Ramzan Kadyrov. Does this mean that the FSB will go against Putin? Putin's days are numbered. There will be a military or forceful coup. Who could be put in Putin's place? Who could be put in Kadyrov's place? In the comments, let us know where you're watching from and leave a few kind words in support of our duo and Ruslan Kutayev, Ruslan Kamgivich. And now the most important question. Could Kadyrov's death create a zone of turbulence in various republics? This is very important and trigger the fragmentation of Russia.
No, here it's important to clearly understand Kadyrov and his influence on neighboring republics. Some experts without any real knowledge have said foolish things about this. No, Kadyrov has never tried to control or influence neighboring regions. Absolutely. He was satisfied with what he had, first of all, and secondly, if the situation in the Chechen Republic itself changes, it won't affect the neighboring regions, but it will impact the Chechen Republic itself, the internal balance, and the behavior of the population. Right now, despite all their hatred toward Kadyrov, the FSB understands that the protest-minded segment of the Chechen Republic's population is enormous. If they try to make any moves, any military, let's say, pursuit operations in any case out of these three groups, if any group ends up on the side against the FSB, then the territory of the Chechen Republic, the overwhelming majority of the population, will support anyone who goes against the FSB of Russia. And this would be an entirely new situation within the Chechen Republic itself. This very process will also affect the neighboring regions. It's not just about Kadyrov's death or a change of power. No, it's something else entirely. If significant military operations were to take place, or if any substantial actions related to encroaching upon those three fundamental pillars that Kadyrov has consistently relied upon were to occur, and if this were to provoke some kind of strong and immediate response within the Chechen Republic itself, whose entire population has, up until this point, largely remained in a carefully neutral position, patiently waiting for their own Chechen forces and security services to actively defend their cherished independence. But if suddenly the FSB starts to act actively there, and some force, be it Delimkanov, Dautov, or someone else, provokes some actions against the FSB, they will be supported, they will receive active support. And then it will become a very serious confrontation, especially given Russia's lack of strength. It will be a serious confrontation.
Ruslan Kamidovich, we are coming to the most important question. If the FSB and Russian special services are already betting on the fall of Putin's regime, does that mean the FSB has already developed a successor plan? That's the question. And who could be this successor, this new Putin? Because as we understand it, in Russia, the FSB appoints the president.
I think this is already known, at least within FSB circles. Let's say for FSB supporters, it will most likely be Patrushev's son, who is currently Deputy Prime Minister. He was the Minister of Agriculture. And there was a certain arrangement that Patrushev Sr. would leave his post as Secretary of the Security Council to become an aide, and his son would be promoted and appointed to a higher position. After all, Patrushev and the FSB have placed all their bets specifically on his son in order to retain political power. I don't see any other candidates today who could claim to be successors to political power. It must be said this is a single power. Despite all the competition and internal conflicts, this is the power they have organized. If anyone is to be the successor to this power, it can only be Patrushev's son. Why not someone else? Well, for example, the governor of the Tula region. No, he can't, because that would no longer be Putin's choice. If it were Putin's choice, the situation would be different. But when Putin is neutralized and someone else comes in, it will be a temporary government. I don't think it will be the father. Most likely, the bet will be placed on Patrushev's son.
Dear audience, right now, together with Ruslan Kutayev, we are discussing the complete paralysis of the skies, railways, and aviation in Russia because the attacks will continue and the consequences for Putin and the economy. Please like this video. Write a few kind words in the comments to support Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine, and our duo with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Kamidovich and I meet every week to discuss important and current events. Ruslan Kamidovich, thank you. And as always, see you next week.
All the best, Dasha, and best wishes to all our esteemed viewers. I support Dasha. I urge you, let's reach 1 million. But when we need to act quickly, dear viewers,